think it comes back what you were talking about, that positive reinforcement. There's also in the book you've just written, we just talked about that earlier at the start of the program. It'd be great to explore more about that. Your debut new book, You're the Best Thing Since Sliced Bread. But in the book, you actually talk a little bit about on the flip side of that positive reinforcement, but actual toxic positivity. And I guess, you were talking about before about maybe how we don't know how prevalent disability is. So like almost 1.6 billion across the world are living with disability, which is like 1 in 6 people. But we don't hear about it. It's like suicide as well. The news, the mainstream media don't project, the grim reality of things like this. We talked about this with a number of different guests on the podcast, including Gus Warland, and just how, we don't want to tackle those hard issues and toxic positivity in terms of if we don't change these difficult elements or difficult aspects of life, how are we going to change it for the next generation? What are your thoughts on that as a concept, but also how is that explored in your new book?
So that's really interesting because we still kind of pigeonhole disabled people in two ways. So we see them as objects of inspiration. So the Paralympians, the athletes and so forth, or, like a drain on society. So like a like a burden, like people who can't do anything, don't have any value to the economy and so forth.
So in your new book, you mention, or there's a quote that I particularly liked. It's the story of every young disabled adult who wants to love and be loved, but is met with rejection in an inaccessible world, not just the infrastructure, but the minds of people too.
Yeah.
So I think this is definitely personified in that concept of that that kind of toxic positivity that we were talking about.
Can I be honest? Like, I'm 37 now, and can I be completely honest? Like, the most challenging element of adulthood is not necessarily a decline in health or, just the normal stuff that comes with being an adult, having to pay bills and, like being an adult. It's actually how very much we have a lot more compassion and empathy for disabled kids. This is kind of perpetuated again by the media. I don't know if you've got the equivalent. Like, we have a lot of shows like, Children in Need, that raise funds for the poor disabled kids. And, we foster this real pity, I suppose, towards disabled children. And we kind of want to protect them, and we're like, oh, bless them. And then as soon as you become an adult, so literally, and this is, very much my experience, as soon as I became 18, a lot of the support, so whether that was hydrotherapy, physiotherapy, kind of the support from education and so forth, all that kind of disappeared literally overnight. It was like, right, you're an adult now, and you're no longer this cute and adorable little disabled kid that needs to be protected from the big bad world. And I'm sure all children kind of feel this a little bit as well, but I think it's magnified when you have a disability because you are deemed as vulnerable, quote unquote. So and I often compare it to, like, being a puppy. Like, that puppies are, innocent and can't defend themselves. And I guess I felt a little bit like that as a child, being in a wheelchair. And then like I said, all of a sudden you're in the big bad world and you're a drain. You're a drain on society. You're a burden. Why aren't you getting a job? Well, why aren't you paying for your own wheelchairs? Why aren't you contributing towards society? And I guess, that was the biggest shock for me. I was put up on this pedestal for the most part. I didn't ask to be put there, but I was put there for the most part of my childhood and, I suppose, adolescence. And then all of a sudden, it went from that to you need to pay for yourself, otherwise people are going to target you for, getting things like special treatment or benefits or care. I've literally had people say, well, why should you get a free wheelchair? Why don't you just get a loan and pay for it yourself? So these attitudes are out there, and no one really prepares you for that. And I think you know, toxic positivity in the sense of when I talk about like inspiration porn, we, you know, we get people, I've had people come up to me, and this is before I was a public figure, like random strangers in the street go, oh my God, you're so inspirational. And I'm like, first of all, you don't know me. I might be an absolute bitch. How do you, like, you know, why would you think that? And it's purely because they look at you and go, wow, if I were in a wheelchair, I don't know whether I would be out, like out getting drunk, out snugging a guy in a pub, or, you know, wearing a Louis Vuitton bag, or, you know, like being on television. I don't think I wouldn't have that courage if I looked like you, or you were in a wheelchair, because we inherently think having a disability is a bad thing. And so now I challenge people, and I say, you know, if I've inspired you, what have I inspired you to do? To be a good writer, to be an actress, to be a you know, a entrepreneur. Like, what? Don't just throw empty words at disabled people and then walk away, because actually what you're saying is, I recognize that the world is disabling. I recognize that it must be bloody challenging being in a wheelchair. You know, I recognize that. But instead of saying, well, how can I make the world better? I'm just going to go, oh, you're so inspirational, and then go away with your day.